What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. This episode is brought to you by Virtual Intelligence, your premier partner for client-facing and back-office virtual employees. My name is Stephen Turnbull, founder of T5 Insurance Services in Clinton, New York, and I'm joined by my co-host today, the one and only, you already know, hold your applause, Mr. Sean Fitzgerald, with his new AirPods on today, ladies and gentlemen, from LAF Advisors in Long Island, New York. What's going on, Sean?
Hey, that's what happens when you hit a few renewals. You can treat yourself a little bit, you know?
See? They need to come with a manual of how to set them up a little easier.
I'm not gonna
right?
lie, I was getting all these prompts. Do you want adaptive this, adaptive that? I was like, I'm lost. Just disable everything.
See, I'm the one that drives my wife nuts, but I'm the one that just goes right for it. Like, oh, I can just figure it out. I don't need the instructions. Just gotta get it going. What's up in Long Island today, Sean? How's everything going?
Dude,
team members
good,
rocking and rolling.
Yeah. Team is firing on all cylinders. We had a great May. Was a freaking phenomenal month. This month is, we're off to a good start. Just having a lot of, I was telling Chris prior to this call, I have been beat to death having the conversation, like the renewal conversation, about the rate going up and whatnot. And we do a good job of notifying our clients ahead of time and having the conversation, but it's like, whew, I was talking with Ryan too, and Ryan's just like, dude, I'm just constantly having the conversation of explaining why their rates are going up so much, So,
well, I'll spin it this way too. What an opportunity to continue that relationship, right? Because
for sure,
haven't had the opportunity to have to talk to the clients as much as we are now. So maybe spinning the outlook on that of how can we make something out of that? Well, good. We're going to get in today's episode. I'm super excited to have this guy on the show. Met him a few months ago at a carrier event. Scratch guy. He's in the thick of it right now. Super excited to have a relevant conversation with Chris Korthaus, who is the founder of CK Insurance Group based in Central Ohio. Chris, how are you today?
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, guys. I am doing great. Crazy busy, just like the rest of us, I'm sure, and we'll jump into that. But I'm looking forward to my first round of renewal conversations. To Sean's point, so he's making it sound super fun. So can't wait for that. But perspective's important, right? Like you mentioned, Steven. So keep that perspective, and it's another way to win a client. But other than that, staying busy, and we're really good. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, Chris, tell us about you. Tell us, the Scratch Agency is less than a year old. We'll get into all that. I want to know, prior to the Scratch Agency, tell us about Chris and what got you here.
Yeah, prior to insurance, Chris grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, but conveniently also from Pittsburgh. So I was born and raised Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and that's fun for my Cincinnati friends to rag on the Steelers guy a little bit. But then moved to Cincinnati. My dad was he was an agent for a while. Then he went to the carrier side. So I've got two great parents, two great siblings. Grew up in Cincinnati, a suburb of Cincinnati called Loveland, Ohio, if you can believe that. It's a real place, I promise. And then went to Ohio State. So I went to I got my undergrad degree from Ohio State. Honestly, was very passionate about financial planning, financial services growing up. Always just had that kind of tenacity, entrepreneurial spirit. Played a lot of sports growing up, and so when I got to Ohio State, majored in business and financial planning. So I thought I was going to be an advisor for a while. And so I am now, but it's just on the insurance side, right? And so
Sure.
Kind of funny to see that progression and how I got here. But big sports fan. And, prior to owning an insurance agency, went to Ohio State and then went right over to Nationwide Insurance.
So talk to us about starting the Scratch Agency, because I think something that in the conversations that we've had has been remarkable is everybody gets there a different way. Everybody had a different type of mentor. Everybody had a different type of path to starting the agency. Different states are have different ways of regulating things, all that good stuff. Like, what was the pivotal point of like, man, I'm gonna do this?
Yeah, so let's go back to March of last year, 2023. I was a life wholesaler, life and long-term care wholesaler for Nationwide. Our distribution had changed, a number of times in my 7-8 years with them. And I quickly realized, I guess it became more profound, more defined of what I thought I knew. that, at a company, right, at a big company, it's not Nationwide's culture to make, the employee just feel like a number. They're actually really good about that. But I always knew I was working for someone else, and that distribution changing, every year or every other year, that was something I was going to face the rest of my career, right? And I wasn't going to have a lot of say in how that changed or how that looked, right? It's just kind of not a fall in line, but right, this is the way it is, and you've got to sell around that, right? And so March of 23 happens. I'm in my fourth or fifth distribution structure change of the business, and my wife had just gotten through law school at Cleveland Marshall. She pursued her dreams of becoming an attorney, and while I supported the household the years prior, and she finally just said, "Hey, is this something you want to continue doing? Like, is this your passion?" And I said, "Well, if I take a look at it the way you did 3 years ago when you left your sales career to go be an attorney, if I'm being honest with myself, I would like to get in business for myself." And so Nationwide, it didn't come until Nationwide gave me that final push of, "Hey, we're going to go through another model change. Do you want to be a part of it or not?" And then that conversation with my wife that happened, and I said, I think I'm gonna try this thing, right? And now the convenience of that, Sean and Steven, is that I had a backing, right? I had a safety net in my wife who has an income, right? A good job and a ton of support. I've heard you guys talk about the support from your significant others and the other guests that you've had on. That is pivotal in this business, especially with what we'll get into as far as my business plan and how I approach my business, to stay lean and really reinvest in my business. I have to have the support of someone like that financially and spiritually. So that's kind of how I got my start last March 2023. And honestly, biggest thing for me back then was get a coffee with somebody every morning. I mean, I've heard it from guests on your podcast. I've done it. I've done it the same way. I got a coffee every day, a lunch every day. I had a phone call with somebody new every day. I called everyone I knew to see what they were doing, how it was going, right? And I just had a ton of conversations. I utilized my network.
Chris, let me stop you there. Where do you think
Yeah.
that comes from within you? Because we met very briefly. We were together for only a few days, right? But
Yeah.
we've connected, since then. But one thing that I'm sitting here when I was preparing for today's show that I was like, well, from the brief interactions that I've had with Chris, what did I think about those interactions? And I think of this carrier event that we were at in front of a bunch of peers, people who have been in the industry for 30 years, people who just started. You had a ton of questions and a ton of good questions. And from my perspective, weren't shy to put yourself out there and be like, "Hey, I'm the new guy. I got a question about this. Tell me more about that." Like, and then you just said, to that point that I just said, you just said, I met with someone new. I called someone new. I put myself out there. Like, where do you think that comes from?
I honestly, I think it was instilled in me when I was young. It's part of, I guess, how I grew up, but who I am to my core. I have this belief that, why not? Why wouldn't I? What is the worst case? Like, is being told no your worst case? Because if so, then, really, what are you afraid of? And there's so much more to gain than to lose, in my opinion, there, right? It's like I can get so much invaluable information from someone like you, Steven, or Sean, who's been in the business longer than me, by asking questions, going to get coffee, seeing if I can help them, right? It doesn't need to be an immediate return for me, but just by asking that question, it truly comes from curiosity. I think if you don't have curiosity as a business owner, you're going to fail. Because if you're not willing to try new things, adapt, talk to people, I think you're dead in the water.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. It's funny. I think about this a lot. Like some people, and Chris, you seem to be like a great communicator, right? When I first started in this industry, I was the furthest from that, and I feel like every once in a while it still might come out a little bit, but I always was like an extremely quiet to myself type of person. So like going into insurance for me was a pretty big deal because that wasn't my strength, to like reach out to somebody and have a coffee. Oh my God, like it seemed like the biggest task.
Sure.
But, I think it's important to know, like, and I just wanted to share this with everybody. I think it's important to know that even if you're not like a social butterfly and maybe you don't think you have the greatest communication skills, like Chris said, if you just know in the back of your head what's the worst that's going to happen, you'll be fine. Worst case scenario, someone yells at you. It's just mouth noise.
Yeah.
Well, to that point, Sean, a mentor of mine locally, when I was going through the in and outs of my head of, am I going to do the scratch agency thing? Am I going to leave the family business? All these things. He said, look at every situation in your life. What's the worst thing that's possibly going to happen? What's the best thing that's possibly going to happen? And what will probably happen?
Yeah.
Right? Whether that's a small thing or not, whether that's reaching out to someone you're nervous to reach out to. What worst thing that happens, they tell you to screw off. Okay, great. Best thing that happens, they drive to meet with you that day. What's probably going to happen? They're probably going to get together. They're going to be a decent human, whatever it might be. And you can apply that to any type of situation when starting a business.
Yeah, the answer lies somewhere in the middle, always, right? Or typically, I would say. And as much as I work on my communication and effective messaging, my wife is 10 times the communicator I am. And
she's an attorney.
Right? But it's and so you imagine those rounds at home, right? I don't come out the window. But I would say to the communication thing, right? Yeah, it's silly to think that we will, but I would say as far as communication goes, it's never been, I guess, the most defined or strong suited thing that I have or possess. But I just, again, it's the will to go after it or the curiosity to do it.
Yeah. Chris, what was the conversation like?
So I was going to ask
with your wife when you said, "Hey, I want to go out on my own."
Yeah, I think
how did she take that?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think that can look several ways. That can go several different ways. I've known for about 9 years, when I met my wife, that she was going to be super supportive of the things that I do because of the passion that I pour into it. She's a great person and would do it anyway, but I don't leave any doubt that I'm going to go after something. And it's not that I approach the conversation with, "Hey, do you think this is okay?" I'm kind of timid about it. Sure, was I scared? Was I nervous? And is that a huge leap of faith? Absolutely. But I approached it as, here's my whole plan. And I heard you had a guest on recently, and I'm blanking on the name. I believe it starts with a V. But he was talking about his conversation with his wife and how he had like a poster board and went through everything. I didn't have the poster board.
Yeah.
What was his name? Yeah. Yep, Osama. And I didn't have the poster board, but it's similar style, right? I went through and I had 400 businesses or names that I could think of, right? Like I showed her everything. And she didn't even need to see it. But once she saw it, it was just, I chased my dream, go chase yours.
Let me ask you this too.
You sold the vision.
Yeah.
Well, right. But let me ask you this. And one of the things that I love about what we do with this podcast is the relatability, right? And over the last couple of months, Sean, I think I've had a couple of people reach out that are thinking of starting an agency, which is a great resource for them if they haven't done it yet, right? I want you, Chris, to answer this question to, let's call it John, who's listening to the podcast and thinking of starting an agency.
Sure.
That conversation with your wife, the preparation for that, the fear that you had internally that maybe you weren't going to say, right? Okay, we're actually doing this. Talk about that feeling from like the preparation, the presentation, if you will, to here's the idea, we're going to do this too. We're doing it now. And talk about what were the feelings of Chris during that moment.
Feelings of Chris were, there's so much to gain from taking this leap of faith and making it if you do it the right way. So first confirming to myself that I have two options. I can stay on with my 6-figure salary job in sales and be comfortable, right? Or I can make the jump, have a bunch of autonomy, and as long as I do X, Y, Z, now you have to define X, Y, and Z, right? The goals that I have to be specific and measurable. And once they are, and I know that those will set me up for success, I've confirmed to myself, okay, as long as I do these things, I should be successful, right? So then it kind of quiets the doubt, right? And it instills more confidence because you've done the homework, you've done the work behind okay, if I do these things, I should be successful. So here is an alternative that is viable, right? It's a real thing I can do and become successful. Is autonomy, my lifestyle, and making an impact by owning a business important to me? Hell yes. Like one of the number one things that I want to do with my life, right? So then at that point, John, I would say if you can check those boxes and that's the same for you, that conversation becomes less fearful for, to having that with your wife, your spouse, or, whoever.
At that point, it just becomes do the work.
Yeah. Right.
I want to share this that Brett Young shared on Instagram yesterday. I think you both probably already saw it. And if you're not following Brett Young, he's been an amazing friend of the show, and I highly suggest following him. But I got his Instagram right here, Brett Young _23. There's the plug. But he shared this post, and I just want to share this because it has to do with kind of the conversation we're saying, and it has to do further with what you just said about define what X, Y, and Z is. Right? If you don't have that defined, and I'm talking to the playbook master over here, Mr. Fitzgerald, have that defined of what it's going to take to do those. He said, tough love, you're average because you won't stop doing what average agents do. Stop waiting for business to come to you. Stop thinking you're entitled about your renewals. Stop waking up at a normal hour. Stop complaining that you work more than 40 hours a week. Stop thinking that your fitness doesn't affect your mental health. Stop saying you don't have enough time. Stop thinking the market access is your problem. Stop quoting without commitment. Stop not asking for the sale, and stop spending 45 minutes on one sales phone call. Stop doing what average agents do, and you'll stop making average money.
Just end the episode there.
That's
it.
Think of that.
That's everything.
Chris, break that down for me.
I mean, he hit on every aspect of your life. It's not just about being successful in business, but like wake up early, right? Have some time to yourself in the morning. Get up and be productive for yourself so that you're then productive in business, for your community, for your family, right? He didn't miss a beat.
Well, one of the most powerful things I think you said in this entire episode was define what X, Y, and Z is.
Mm-hmm.
We all know. Let me rephrase. I'll put myself. I know what it'd be like to talk to Sean Fitzgerald at about 10 a.m. if he didn't have his 1 cup of coffee and didn't work out.
Yeah, I'd be pissed.
Right.
Right. But like, we know that because those are Sean's X, Y, and Z's.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, those are the things that you're setting up to have a successful day, a successful week, month, whatever.
Yeah. I know I'm the interviewee, but I have a question for you guys. So as
That's
far
Sean.
as, yeah, Sean. So as far as, that life, I truly think that this isn't just about a business or insurance. It's about a lifestyle that you want to create, right? And an impact on other people.
Yep.
If you're not doing all of those things, if you're not defining the X, Y, and the Z, then you're not really creating that lifestyle, or you're not chasing the ultimate dream of success, I guess, in all facets, right? So what does your day look like? And I can get into mine too, but Sean, what does your day look like?
That's a good question. I mean, my day always starts with something early in the morning. I'm trying not to look at emails or get caught up in what I have to do for the day. Like, so I have 2 kids. I don't know if you have any kids, Chris, but I have 2 little kids. So I have to be up by, I would say, latest 4:30 because I need to get a workout in. I need to get my reading in. I need to get the breakfast ready for the kids. I got to get the bottle ready for the kids. I got to get ready for work. This way, when 7 o'clock rolls around, I can get them ready for daycare and babysitter and wherever they got to go.
Yep.
That's when the chaos happens. After the morning, I'll call that the morning routine. After that's over, I have gotten, I would say, honestly, just this year, I've gotten, over the last couple of months, I've finally gotten better at structuring my day. So my calendar basically now from, let's call it 9:30 to 4 is just jam-packed with client calls, podcasts. It's basically what Billy teaches us from the beginning, Steven. It's all time blocking stuff.
Yeah.
Prospecting, all that stuff. So it's all scheduled and very deliberate. I am trying to get in a better flow of what's in the calendar, meaning like if I have a client call, I don't want to have a client call, then a podcast, then a client call, then a different task, then a different, like I kind of want it to be like a podcast, a call with Chris to catch up and talk about, whatever's going on at his new agency. Like kind of keep it a little bit of a flow so you're not like going from one extreme to the other. You know what I mean? Because
Absolutely.
I feel like when you're in a flow, you just feel so much better. Your energy is so much better. So I'm not perfect at that, but that's what I'm working on.
Yeah.
And then nighttime, you know how it is with two kids.
Oh.
I would say from 5 to 7:30 is spending time with the kids, getting them, getting them down and putting them to sleep by 8 o'clock, and then I might hop on the computer for an hour,
right,
talk with the wife, hang out a little bit, and then I'm asleep by 9:30. So
yeah.
People always ask me, how do I get up so early? I just go to bed early.
Right.
You know, but honestly, that's what my day looks like. I used to have more. There used to be a little bit more like networking stuff built in there, like go to a BNI or go to a lunch meeting and stuff like that. But as you know, Chris, I have 2 kids under 2. It's really difficult to get out of the house. And honestly, a lot of the networking stuff I do now is like via Zoom and stuff. So that's worked well for me and helped me keep the most productive schedule. So that's kind of my routine. I don't know if that answered your question.
It did completely. I think to spend just a second there too, right? If you don't get up at that early time and get the kids ready, that bleeds into your work day, right? Then your work day, then your time blocks are all messed up. If you don't time block, then it bleeds into your evening with your kids, right? It's all a domino effect. And that's just what I was trying to highlight. I think one of my weaknesses right now, if I'm being completely honest, I know what needs to get done in a day or a week, but it's not time blocked, right? So I'm kind of, spraying the board a little bit with what I do and when versus actually time blocking that out.
Yeah, it's tough, man. And especially if you have children, like I could say, cool, I'll wake up, by 4:30, but what's to stop my son from waking up at 5:15?
Right.
And now my whole morning is, so you got to get creative,
Yeah.
And that's why the time blocking during the day when the kids are wherever, I know regardless of what happens, I'm getting that stuff done.
Totally.
So hopefully that helped a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for sharing.
So, Chris, tell us about the early days here, because we're in the early days. Let's talk about the agency. Tell us how. So you're under a year. Where are you at in the year mark?
8 months. So I'm going on month 8.
Going on month 8.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about what it's been like, and maybe some things that were unexpected, or maybe some things that you thought would be challenging that weren't as challenging. And let's dive into the last 8 months here.
Yeah. So 8 months in, I would say it's been a lot of trial and error. Now that is something that I prep for and plan for as much as possible. But we all know having experience in something and trying to prepare for something that you don't have experience in are 2 different things, right? But I do still think you need to prep for that. So a lot of trial and error, that's how I learn. I need to be involved in something. I need to be in it to fully understand it. I would say the first 3 or 4 months, you are just trying to write the low-hanging fruit well. So, crossing your T's, dotting your I's, making sure with my carrier partners, my mentors, my resources, my network of people that will help me, that have supported me. Hey, this is written right, correct? How else should I think of this? What else am I missing? Right. So double checking, triple checking everything. Now we've gotten a little faster pace to that. I would say the primary focus has been personal lines, because that's the lower hanging fruit, right? The home, the auto, the umbrella. Gotten super comfortable there, and at this point can really hash that out on my own and bind without much of a problem. I do focus on frontline underwriting, stuff like that. I would say I'm just now stepping into the commercial spaces. Writing some bigger commercial policies and really balancing that book out. But for me, the first 8 months, first 12 months, 16 months is all about kind of growing organically and not radically.
Yeah, that's great, man. I mean, personal lines, honestly, is a great place to start because that's going to build you such a solid base, And one thing I recommend to anybody who's just starting out is talk to your underwriter, whatever carrier you have access to. Say, what do you guys just knock it out of the park with? Is it homes 750,000 to $1 million in value? Is it homes 500,000 and under? Like, get those demographics because it's going to help you come time of when you're talking to somebody, qualifying them, right? Steven, you've been talking about that a ton. It's like qualifying the prospect. So I think if I could go back and do it over, that's like one thing I would tweak is like have more conversations with the underwriter. Like, what are you crushing? Remember, Steven, when I talked to a commercial underwriter, they told me they're writing they're like, yeah, we just randomly, they're like, yeah, we bind 79% of all the liquor stores we quote. I was like,
Right.
what? So then
Right.
we just start cold calling liquor stores.
Yeah.
So I think there's a ton of value that can come from just having a conversation, because what works for Steven works for you, Chris, that works for me is all going to be something completely different. So
Man, no kidding.
Talk to your underwriter.
Like buying leads worked real well for me. Chris, what's the plan? What's the plan for that? How's the new business been organically? Are you involved in the community a lot? Do you do a lot of referral partners? Like, what's been the success to growing the book over the last 8 months?
Yeah, there's a lot of irons in the fire. I think you've got to have a ton of them. And that takes time. It takes relationships. This is a relationship business, and make no mistake about that. To anybody listening that might be starting soon, this is or thinking of starting. This is a relationship business, and like watering any plant's going to take some time. I know that sounds cliche, but I would say a lot of it comes from community involvement, right? So community impact. This isn't just about my business, right? I hope to benefit other groups of people, right? So we live near Franklin Park here in Columbus, so we're part of that FPCA, right? We're involved in the communities around us, and as well as I've got a couple entrepreneurial groups I'm part of, AM Spirit, other things like that, and then Ohio Insurance Agent Association, right? So between that and then the centers of influence that I identify out of my network, such as other business owners, good buddies of mine, right? There's centers of influence as well. So those 4 or 5 things, I've got to spend time there every single week to make an impact in those 5 areas. And then that does also benefit the business long term.
Love that.
What does next year at this time look like for CK Insurance?
Yeah, that's a great question. Would you consider that short term or long term? If
I'd consider it long term, but that's because I'm coming up about 2 years. It feels like 20, which
right.
I'm sure you can attest to. Both of you can attest to.
100%.
But I think like it's interesting in the scratch journey. There are a lot of people. What does the next 5 years look like? What's the next 10 years look like for the agency? What does next year look like? What's your plan for service help? What's your plan for sales? What is the scalability of CK look like?
Great question. If that's the long term stage, then I would honestly put hiring all stars and acquisition under that umbrella. That's the long term vision, right? Like to really grow, scale, make the impact on my employees' lives and the business and my clients that I want at the scale that I want. I have to hire great people. I hear a lot of talk, especially on this podcast in this community, about VAs. In the short term, I'm considering VA hire, but long term, I know that I'm going to need in-office reps, in-office agents, and kind of create a blueprint for that to really scale. And then I do want to spend some time on acquisition. I was listening to your podcast with Cole the other day, or I think it might have been a month or 2 ago, actually.
Yep.
He started with a couple smaller acquisitions, right, of agencies, and I just think that's brilliant. So those are some of the things that I'm focused on long term.
Yeah, man, it's tough. Steve and I have been talking about it the last few episodes, is having that clear vision.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing that I like about what you said too, is with the VA thing, it's obviously a big buzz everywhere, and VAs have certainly changed my agency, the way that I can operate. And I know Sean is for sure. I like how you approach that though, of kind of like, hey, to get you through certain seasons, maybe you're not going to be a fully VA company, but if you can have a VA that can help you get to the next stage, and then you can bring salespeople in and then get an office manager. And like, I just love looking at life in general, business or whatever it is like the seasons of life. Right. So that's why I asked you that question about 1 year. Like, okay, we know we all want to take over the world or have a great, successful, profitable agency in 20 years, but like, what does the seasonal life from today to next year look like for CK Insurance, and to say like, hey man, maybe a VA would be able to help me get there, and then we can graduate from that point to whatever, and have that VA support those new hires. And
Yeah.
It's a wormhole, right, Sean? Because I mean,
Yeah,
we've had people on this show, we're 81 episodes or something like that, with 81 different ways to do it.
It's really just when you get to that point, it's what tasks can you take off your plate that you don't like doing, that are low dollar tasks that you can give to somebody else, so you can go crush those goals that you set to buy an agency or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, and those are the ones we've talked about, Steve. With okay, I want to prospect more, but how am I going to prospect more if I'm doing this service, this thing? I'm putting a policy in AMS and I'm doing it. That's something a virtual employee can do.
For sure. I would say servicing takes up a ton of my time right now, right? And that's great because you learn the business, and then you're really responsible for the relationship with the client at that point. You own that, which I love. But I'd be lying if I said it doesn't take time away from future sales. So that's the kind of cost balance that, you really have to look at. I'd say short-term seasons. I love that figure speech from you, Stephen. I think short-term seasons, the first season for me, first chapter was stay lean, keep costs low, make an impact on your relationship with clients you can attain, right? And grow organically because you have the ability, the financial and emotional support to do so. Reinvest in the business, and then hire, right? If that's a VA to start, if that's my next season, my next chapter, it gets me to the third season, third chapter, right? So there's all stepping stones.
Yeah, and with the service aspect too, like, don't get me excited. Show me that book.
I'm showing, for those who are not watching on YouTube, I'm showing the Buy Back Your Time book that Sean has introduced me to. It's exactly what all that talks about.
Yeah, but with the service aspect too, it's like, how much of that stuff could you not do right when you get it? You know what I mean? Somebody calls in, they want to just update their mortgage because they got a letter in the mail. How about no problem? We'll get it done by the end of the day tomorrow. It'll all be done. You'll get a confirmation email. This way, you're not stopping your day when you could be prospecting.
We should do a whole episode about this.
Really should.
But spot on, Sean. And I'm working with Mike Cruz now about setting up a service at T5 email for that exact reason, to set that expectation. And we've worked on our Advisory Evolve site with getting the one big form for the client service center. So basically any service request that comes through, Mr. or Miss Smith, thank you so much. Please fill out this form and our team will take care of it within 24 hours. Right. Whereas literally 2 months ago, Stephen was, oh man, let me bounce this out quick. This mortgagee change that has no time sensitivity to it. Let me just stop everything I'm doing right now to do it. Makes no sense. But that's what you think when you're in that role and it's just you, right? Because it's another task off your list.
Right.
That's it, man. So I was about to go down the service form wormhole. We'll save it for another time.
But there's a lot of truth to it. There's a lot of truth to it.
Well, then that's setting the foundation. We talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
Like, and my pushback to Cruz when he was like, dude, you got to get on a service email. And I'm like, well, there's 3-4 of us now. And I'm like, okay, but that makes sense. But how do you navigate that? Like, you're setting that foundation, right?
Yeah, but you're also training your clients how to contact you.
That's so true.
If they call you at 8 and you pick up the phone, you're teaching them that it's okay to call you around that time and ask you a question.
Yeah.
Let's spend 1 second there, because that's something that I've learned a lot around lately. So when I first started my business and my agency, I'm the young guy that, with no experience, that's starting a new business. And I'm going against agencies of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 decades, right? That do handle clients that way, right? They have processes, system. Whereas if you were a new client for me in the month 1 or 2, and you called me at 8, I'm going to pick up your phone call. Mm-hmm. And now 6, 8 months later, right, that they are still calling at 8, and because I've set that expectation early on. Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
you got to slowly wean it off, I think.
Yeah.
I got a client that I mean, I feel like every client has my cell phone number, which at this point is down a rabbit hole. But I had a guy text me this morning, literally, of a VIN number. Please add this to my auto policy with the VIN number.
Yeah.
In the years past, I would have screenshotted of that, emailed it to myself if I wasn't there so I could have it, take care of it, whatever. I sent him our service form. No complaints, filled it out. My service form has everything I need. Like I had the conversation with him. I know exactly when and how he needs it. So I think but building that from the foundation can be huge. Chris, as we're trying to wrap this up, probably in the next couple of minutes, I want to ask you a very direct question.
Sure.
In the last 8 months, have you ever thought about quitting?
No, not once.
Why?
It has not felt like an ounce of work yet. I would say,
wait for the first renewals.
Yeah. Hey, talk to me. This is chapter 1. Talk to me in 4 months. But no, it has not. When I worked at Nationwide, I was selling life and long-term care to advisors across the country. It was a phenomenal product, and it was similar to what I do now, but it was one product line and it was for somebody else, and there was always changes, and I had no autonomy. Right now, I'm doing that for myself, and I'm making half or a quarter or whatever it is of what I used to, at least initially, but I can get on my laptop or whatever I need to at 8 p.m. if I want, and it still has not felt like work. So no, there's no desire to quit. In fact, it's the passion for what I do and how I do it has only increased.
And that end game is in mind, right?
That's right.
And you're in the middle of the X, Y, and Z steps.
Correct.
I'm smiling because I just know you're gonna crush it, Chris.
I'm trying, man.
You're gonna do a great job, man. Yeah, it's a rare select amount of people that are excited to do what we do. You know what I mean? Like, Steven, think about how it's so difficult to start your own business. So difficult, and I just think of like all the hours, like you talked about autonomy before, and it almost like triggered me to like go down this wormhole of like, there is a lot of autonomy, right? You have full control. If you want to take off, you could take off.
Yeah.
But working now, you're investing in your long term.
For sure.
So there is autonomy, but I don't want people to think like, if you want to achieve let me rephrase that. If you want to achieve big things, you're not going to have as much autonomy as you think you're going to have in the initial stages.
Yeah. Well, and let's wrap it up by this too. We've done a lot of rah-rah during this episode, which is all fantastic, but this is also extremely hard, right? Yep. The three of us know that. And I would say to anybody that's listening to this that is thinking of doing it, like Chris said in the beginning, talk to people that are doing it or have done it. Listen to this podcast. When I think it was almost a year and a half that I thought about doing it, started talking to the people, seeing what it would be like. To Chris's point, make sure I had the support at home, make sure we were good, whatever it might be, and planning it out correctly. But the resources, especially in this industry, is just incredible to have a conversation with someone who's been a scratch agent for like Chris for 8 months, or someone who's 20 years into it that would gladly pick up the phone and talk to somebody. Chris, last question here as we wrap this up.
Mm-hmm.
If you were tomorrow morning to start back over at zero, CK's first day in business is tomorrow morning, what's one thing that you do differently? First thing that comes to mind.
My first instinct is to do I really wouldn't change it. But on second thought, we just talked about how you service your clients. And from day one, I think I was so eager to do everything I could. Sell, service, no matter when, no matter how. And I still have that belief, but there's guardrails or guidelines you can initiate to help you in your business with a process that kind of coach your clientele, right, on how to operate with you, how to interact with you. And you're still meeting them where they are, right? And so I think that's the one thing. If I woke up, CK Insurance wasn't a thing, and I had to do it all over, I'm going to change I'm going to change how I handle that part of the business.
I love it. Love it. Chris, thank you for taking the time to join us, man.
Yeah,
I know 45 minutes when you're a one-man show is a lot to carve out as a scratch agent. So I appreciate you taking the time to join us. Super cool that, it's great to have these different conversations, Sean, with the different seasons of business that people are in the scratch world that we've had. And this was refreshing to have someone in the thick of it right now. Chris, thanks for joining us. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap this up, or what can people get in touch with you? How can they follow along your journey? All that good stuff.
Yeah, Chris at ck-ins.com is my email. I've got
Awesome.
a website, so visit me there. I do want to say before we cut out, super grateful for this community, this podcast, right? The community you guys have built. I will say half of the motivation I get daily, weekly stems from that. Things I learned come from that.
So cool.
Wouldn't be half of where I am without it. So truly thank you guys for having me, and thanks for what you do.
Appreciate that. Thanks, man.
Appreciate you saying that. Thank you. And if you're wondering what community, what is he talking about? The scratchagencypodcast.com. Hit join the community. It's a Telegram community. We got about 50 people in there now, scratch agents, all different seasons of life, different walks of life, different areas of the country, different stages in their journey, all that good stuff. So make sure to do that. I'm also going to have an additional ask for everybody. Check out our YouTube channel. The YouTube channel's been buzzing lately, Sean. And
Yes,
the editing team is throwing out a ton of good stuff, cutting up the clips. All the prior episodes are there in a nice little organized fashion. Thankful for Sean Fitzgerald doing all of that, because if it was for me, it'd probably just all be deleted on accident and you wouldn't be able to find anything. So everybody, that's another episode of the Scratch Agency Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. But most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, in your own future. We'll see you next week. Take care.